So, I want to make sure I give a little bit of credit where a little bit of credit is due. After 23 episodes, Star Trek Discovery finally produced an episode that was a bit more entertaining and fairly well written. Though I still have numerous complaints with the series, and I don't actually care for its place in the Star Trek franchise because it doesn't really feel like actual Star Trek to me, I will praise the effort the writers and producers made in the recent episode, If Memory Serves. This is the 8th episode of Season 2 and is filled with surprises and nods to the original series. Most importantly, it actually added a little bit more intrigue to the mystery behind the Red Angel storyline. Now, I have to be honest, I think the storyline itself isn't that strong as a concept, and I can't stand the pacing of the show, especially given how slowly this season's plot is unfolding. The series remains too dark, too bleak, and overall fairly joyless, with none of the hope, optimism, and fun of the other shows. That being said, If Memory Serves held my interest, despite the show's flaws, and even paid homage to pre-existing Star Trek canon without desecrating it in any way. In fact, the producers and writers took great pains to faithfully, and I would say lovingly, tip the hat to the original pilot. The Cage from 1966, the events of that episode, and even adding to that story in a way that wasn't gimmicky. The episode opens with a previously on Star Trek and a montage complete with actual archive footage from the original episode, which of course will come as a surprise to many Discovery critics, myself included. This isn't the first time archival material has been used in a modern Trek production made under the new license agreement since 2009. In Star Trek Beyond, young Spock from the Kelvin timeline is given the personal effects of Spock Prime following his death. He finds a photograph in his belongings of the original cast from Star Trek V. So this kind of thing is certainly possible, and it helps to at least insert the newly produced Trek into pre-existing canon. The opening is a nice touch, and it serves a useful purpose. It explains an important piece of Captain Pike's past. He recalls his experiences on Talos IV, his relationship with the character of Vina, and it reintroduces the Talosians. I have to say, Anson Mount is the strongest part of this show at this stage, and his version of Pike seems to be really winning fans over. Not only is he a really solid actor, channeling Jeffrey Hunter while also putting his own spin on the character, but he's also kind of a dead ringer for the guy. If the producers are smart, they'll recognize his popularity and capitalize on it. Forget the Georgiou Section 31 spin-off series. Give us a Captain Pike series on the Enterprise set before TOS. That actually has potential in my view. While Burnham takes Spock to Talos IV to help him regain his sanity with the help of the telepathic Talosians, Section 31 are gunning them down. The relationship between Spock and Burnham is finally explained in a way that kind of makes sense. The reason we never heard of Michael Burnham before is because the Red Angel traveled through time, intervened in the past, and stopped her from being killed as a child. It's a retconning that actually works fine. The question is, of course, is the series now operating in an alternate timeline? Another alternate timeline. Ethan Peck looks and acts nothing like the Spock we know, and I'm hoping the beard isn't going to be around for very much longer, but we'll see how he unfolds as Season 2 progresses. He's not bad though, he does a decent job in this episode. The Talosians are certainly a highlight. The makeup looks like a proper modern day take. They're still instantly recognizable to the original, but a big improvement at the same time. Even their costume resembled the one they wore in The Cage. When Burnham lands on the planet, she encounters those weird blue plants that produce a kind of high-pitched, eerie, whiny sound. The same ones that Pike and Spock found in their first visit to Talos in the pilot. Again, the visual effects update is perfect. It's a big improvement while still remaining true to the original design. They even stop making the sound when they're touched. The core of the story for me is Pike's telepathic reunion with Vina. Pike is emotionally tortured by these visions. There's a pain and a joy in seeing her again. It's very conflicting for him. Originally played by Susan Oliver, Melissa George does a great job with this version of Vina, and both her and Mount have believable on-screen chemistry reminiscent of Hunter and Oliver. It genuinely felt like an authentic continuation of the relationship from over 50 years ago, but just with different actors in the roles. Spock is eventually restored and reveals that the Red Angel is a human. He saw a vision of the future when he mind-melded with it some time ago. It was the founding worlds of the Federation being destroyed by an alien attack. As to the true intent of Section 31, that remains to be seen, but it's important to note this Section 31 storyline is another break from canon. Section 31 was introduced in Deep Space Nine, over 100 years after the events of Discovery. Sisko had never heard of them before, no one had, and though they did appear in the prequel Enterprise based 200 years earlier, they were never actually mentioned on that show by name. It was only inferred that that's who Malcolm Reed had been working with. In Deep Space Nine, Dr. Bashir was recruited by Sloan from Section 31. They didn't have their own ships. They never officially revealed their identity to anyone in Starfleet. They operated in secret, in the shadows. But on Discovery, they seemed to have the same visibility as Starfleet intelligence. They were also mentioned in Star Trek Into Darkness in what felt like a bit of an unnecessary and rather gratuitous name drop. It's as if the writers and producers haven't fully studied Section 31 in terms of the history of Star Trek lore. I get the impression that they don't fully understand the mythology and they're just making it up as they go along. They seem to think that Section 31 are like the NSA or the CIA. This version of Section 31 operates in full public view. There's nothing secretive or mysterious about them, except that their operatives seem to be pawns in a wider plot. So Discovery's portrayal of Section 31 is a misrepresentation of that institution. If memory serves, is an improvement over previous entries into this series, although that isn't saying very much. I think at this point, audience expectations are so low that any kind of improvement is seen as a major step up. I'm currently rewatching Star Trek Voyager, a show I always felt never truly achieved its full potential, and yet I'm finding myself watching it going, dear Lord, this was a good show. Fun, intelligent, not politically divisive in any way, optimistic, and filled with likable characters. Janeway is also an example of the kind of strong female character that modern Hollywood has forgotten how to write for. Though this episode is an improvement, let's not get carried away here. It's plodding in places, and the story arc that it sits within is being doled out too slowly, and I honestly don't really care how it unfolds one way or the other. I'd much prefer to see solid standalone stories like The Orville than what we're getting on Discovery. The budget is amazingly high on this show. The production values are insane. I mean, it looks fantastic. It looks like a movie each week, and yet the stories are simply mediocre. If memory serves, helps to somewhat steady the ship, and I think it is to be praised for paying a meaningful and respectful tribute to the Cage. But the central issues remain. The show is too dark, often boring, it feels a bit like Game of Thrones in space, and it's trying too hard to be edgy rather than fun. By contrast, The Orville feels more like Star Trek, and the producers haven't forgotten the most important thing of all, that it's supposed to be fun. Perhaps, if memory serves, will represent the start of a major change for the show. Perhaps not. It's a welcome step up over the average Discovery episode, and that is praiseworthy, but there's a long way to go before it can reach the heights of past Trek shows. If Season 2 concludes the Red Angel storyline, my recommendations for Season 3 would be as follows. Retain Anson Mount as Captain Pike. Downgrade Michael Burnham as the main character and make the series more ensemble-based. Ideally, write Michael Burnham out of it entirely, but I don't think that's going to happen. Knock it off with the J.J. Abrams lens flares, because they make the show practically unwatchable at times. And reduce the Dutch angles while you're at it. Focus on clever sci-fi standalone stories rather than trying to stretch weak, season-long story arcs across 15 episodes. Also, can we actually see the full ship more? I feel like we rarely get to see the Discovery in proper glory shots. Stop it with the wokeness and politically correct crap. Stunts like killing off the mansplainer in the episode Brother is a move that's entirely mean-spirited and antithetical to Trek's philosophy. Inject some actual hope, fun, and optimism into the writing, and reduce the antagonism, please. By all means have conflict between the characters, but these people are supposed to represent the best of the Federation's ideals. They can all talk about how evolved they are, but in practice, this show has far too many characters that are filled with attitude, snark, and a general pessimistic outlook. The smug factor is at warp 10. They also need to bring in some quality sci-fi writers, because these plots are fairly derivative and the show feels more fantasy-based rather than intellectual science fiction. Of course, I don't expect any such recommendations to ever be taken on board. I fully anticipate that Star Trek Discovery will continue to boldly go where it's been going for the past season and a half already. Though it will eventually hit its stride, no doubt, as most shows do after a couple of seasons, and I'm sure it will produce the occasional decent story now and then, Discovery may have already alienated too many fans at this point. While this episode is worthy of acknowledgement for the tribute it paid to the Cage, the scenes with Pike and Vina, and the Telosians, I still don't think it's a significant enough improvement to warrant me changing my mind about the show at this point, though it is at least a minor step in the right direction. Now the question is, can the writers and producers build on this step and right the wrongs of the past season and a half?